Everybody, wait a minute. I mix what I like, what I like. I mix what I like is exactly where you want and need to be. I mix what I like, organic, vegan, soul food from your immediate diet. Get healthy. Get healthy. I mix what I like, what I like.
We're here on I Mix What I Like. You may check us out on iMixWhatILike.org, where you can see all these other shows and what my daddy likes and other cool things.
Yes, indeed. What's up, world? Welcome back to I Mix What I Like right here on Black Liberation Media. Again, I'm Jared Ball. Happy Monday morning. Greetings, peace, and welcome, everybody. Of course, do all of the things like share, subscribe, support the Patreon, put this in your socials, tag Black Liberation Media so we can tag you back. All of those good things. And again, welcome to those seeing this live, which we are not. Welcome to you, and to those who will see this later when we're not live, as we are also not now. Peace and welcome to you as well. Have a very, I think, special edition of I Mix What I Like. First of all, had a wonderful little birthday celebration this weekend. Many thanks to all those who sent well wishes, to those who were able to swing by the house. It was great, and to see the overlap of various stages of my life interacting with one another was fantastic. And to see, and even predictably see, some tension, not tension, but where folks, where there's going to be some disagreement ahead of time. But it was just wonderful, multi-generational. Shout out to Mr. Porter. He made it through. Jared Ware and his spouse Jennifer. Shout out to them for coming through. Shout out to my man Parrish and Roosevelt, and of course Dr. Orasami Burton. I mean, it was a wonderful Dr. Jason Nichols, Mazi Mutafa. It was a one my shoe guard, my favorite person outside the family. Suzette was there. I mean, it was a wonderful, wonderful gathering. So big shout out to all of them, her partner Marla, Nelson, young Nelson, and they unfortunately ran into a buzzsaw on the spades table. Shout out to apparently Dr. Burton and my former spades partner Rose got busy on the spades table. So shout out to them. The scorecard's still on the kitchen table, by the way. No, it was just a good time, very good time. So thanks to all of them and all of you, and it was great. But part of that was also in terms of people who were there. Mtume Gant came through, and before he left, we sat down for sort of an in-depth part one, because as you'll see, and there needs to be many, discussion of his life and career, with some teasers for future discussions, uh, and around who he's interacted with. You know, we've talked mostly around here about his work as a film critic, but less about his time in the industry, which you'll hear about. So I'm very much looking forward to that, and I know you're going to enjoy it. So you know, select whatever beverage and healthy snack, and definitely get comfortable. But before we do that, there is something I do want to share. Um, we have had a number of discussions about technology and its role, and some discussion, whether it was related to the blockchain and crypto world, or whether it's related to HBCUs, Black education, the imposition of STEM. We've had a number of these discussions, a number of disagreements here and there with on the platform and beyond. But I want to play a short clip of from a platform that initially I thought I had been introduced to by Josh. Shout out to Josh. But as it turns out, when I scrolled deeper down into my watch later playlist, this person's platform was actually there. I had just not gotten there yet. Josh hit me up, said, "You need to check this person's platform." I did, and among many other gems is this one I want to play a little clip in a moment here, because what she's talking about. So I'll get to that in a second. My point has always just been, and this is where I've gotten into, that it's not that we don't want Black or anybody to learn STEM, science, technology, engineering, math, etc. It's that I've encouraged that we understand the politics of why that's being targeted, specifically for Black students, and as a reminder of what others have had to say in terms of the history of the relationship between technology and society, that technology does not change those relationships, it enhances them. So whatever power relationships exist, introduction of new technology is not going to upset that relationship, despite some claims to the otherwise. It's only going to intensify them. That's my argument. What we're going to see here is from a platform, uh, uh, I think just called Dr. Fatima, who is herself, is it nuclear physics? She's a physicist of some kind. I can't remember exactly what she's a PhD in, has published a lot in, but she does the physical world, the physics scientific world stuff. But she often does it with a perspective, an anti-colonial or anti-imperialist perspective. And if I'm overdoing it or underdoing it or I don't, it's just, I'm newly introduced, so I'm still catching up. But in following her videos, which again talk about things I don't understand, but are just fascinating to listen to hear about. She gets into, and this is why I like whether it's either atheist debates or even these kinds of scientific platforms that are done this way, is that there's always some political bent to it. There's always a recognition, as there should be, of the relationship between technology, science, and society. So I just want to play. This is from a video. Obviously, the link will be in the show description, of her talking about a broader set of issues, but specific that do relate to. Well, specifically, the video was about her critique and sometimes agreement with why a focus on DEI in science is misplaced. And again, she clarifies that she's not saying, obviously, that there's not to be that diversity is not a good thing. It's that it misses the point, in and of itself, misses the point of the issue of politics, science, who should be involved, who does science benefit, how is it studied, and all of that. So you really do have to watch the full video to properly understand what she's saying. I'm sort of rushing through this and overly simplifying, but I do want to play this clip, which does, I think, say plenty to the point I'm trying to make. Obviously, it's making her point, but to fully understand what that point is, you will have to see her whole video on that. So check this out, and then we'll come back and get into this fascinating discussion with Professor Mtume Gant about specifically his film career and so on and so forth. So, but right now, let's check out Dr. Fatima.
The selectively oppressive functions of industrial capitalism are, of course, not a topic of instruction in the vast majority of STEM courses. Thus, when economic sustainability, environmental justice, or global food security do today find expression in engineering curricula, it is often as part of a brief introduction or ancillary framing that would not be likely to disrupt flows of economic and political influence in the nation. Instead, we have seen particular popularity for the notion of innovation as an important means by which America can regain global competitiveness and achieve economic and, especially since 9/11, military security. Can I make this joke again? It seems appropriate. I'm sure there's somebody watching this right now who's thinking, of course they're not going to learn about that. They got to learn about kinematics and thermodynamics and all that other technical stuff so they can do the innovation for us. To that person, as well as the person who asked me in my quantum mechanics video what I meant by two things can be true at once, here's a great example. Yes, technical knowledge is obviously a critical component of any comprehensive education in engineering, as well as any other STEM field. Duh. Literally no one's saying otherwise. But since engineers literally do the work of building the world we live in, I would personally feel a lot more comfortable if they were also, operative word, also equipped with a basic level understanding of society scale ethics and how science and technology can be used to political ends. It can be technical and social. The mutually exclusive choice of technical or social is a false one. But as Slayton and others have demonstrated, at present time, an engineering education that integrates the technical and the social is exceedingly rare. If anything, there's actually some pretty grim evidence that shows that a standard engineering education, in fact, decreases students' interest in social welfare, at least in the US. And I think this is true across STEM. I mean, how else do you get that statistic where half of white doctors literally don't believe Black people feel the same pain they do? Listen, we can debate the efficacy of affirmative action or whatever other intervention to remedy historical inequity in education till the cows come home. And just to be perfectly clear, I do personally consider it a moral imperative to address those historical inequities. But until we ask more than just who is allowed to do the work, STEM is going to be kind of like the Supreme Court. Yes, there's a woman there. There are in fact a few women there. But is it good for women? I kind of don't think it does anymore. I really, really hope that people don't leave this video thinking I believe diversifying STEM is an unimportant endeavor. I know for a fact that some people will, but I guess I'm willing to take that risk because I sincerely think this framework of asking who is STEM for can be a lot more productive than just asking what are the demographics of STEM workers? For one, because the former includes the latter, right? If STEM is indeed for everyone in society, then it just makes sense to have a diverse workforce to cater to a diverse society. Think back to the earlier stuff about self-driving cars and all that. But this question opens up a whole slew of other questions about STEM that I think are important not just to the people who are excluded by it, but literally everyone. Or like, almost everyone. Almost certainly you. Why are so many Americans increasingly unable to access medical care despite us making all these advances in the treatment of diseases? Why is human space exploration led by guys whose factories are in such bad conditions that their workers are pissing in bottles? Why are all these platforms that claim to connect and educate us rotting our brains and undermining our democracies? There are more interesting questions we could be asking, more liberatory goals we could be striving towards, a more egalitarian and awesome future that we could be imagining. STEM being diverse is important, but let's not settle for crumbs. We deserve more than that. You deserve more than that. Unless you're these guys, then go f*** yourself.
Now listen, that's called my boy. You know nothing about that.
Definitely check the link in the show description and watch that and more of her videos. They're really excellent, and at least in my case here, make many of the points that I would be wanting to make. And specific to the HBCU Black community question, this is largely my point. As she's pointing out, as Dr. Fatima is pointing out in that video, it is both technical and social. The entire point but for me, that is the entire point, that it is technical and social, that there is a social impact, that there is a political impact to all of this. Specific to the HBCU Black question, it is at least it's meant to be part of a process of de-radicalizing the community that is being targeted for further continued permanent perpetual oppression and exploitation. And as Dr. Fatima is pointing out there, citing the research you will have to follow up with through the link in the show description to her links in her show's description, is showing that STEM, but it comports with the book we were talking about before that I always reference with Dr. Favors, that when it relates to STEM, there is no educational component. And really broadly speaking, there is no educational component anywhere institutionalized in such a way that will teach people the political economy, as opposed to economics versus political science. And it's certainly not going to, as Mr. Porter was even pointing out this weekend, but it's not teaching the context of colonization, imperialism. It's not saying what the political function of this technology is in society. And that's exactly the point that I was trying to get at. Yeah, she says they're not teaching political economy to STEM students. That's the point. Okay. All right, everybody. Again, shout out to Josh for pointing me towards Dr. Fatima, and definitely shout out to Dr. Fatima for if nothing else, and I'm sure she's done much more, but if nothing else, making my point. Oh, speaking of which, this is the gift I got from my oldest. Awesome like my daughter. Facts. All right, everybody. Let's get to this discussion with Professor Mtume Gant. I'm sure you're going to love it. And please make sure you like, share, subscribe, support the Patreon, put this in your socials. Make sure you have the bell rung so you don't miss all the great offerings coming up even later today on Black Liberation Media. So peace, only if you're willing to fight for it, as Fred Hampton used to say. I will see you next time on I Mix What I Like, but we will see you coming up right now. All right, so Mtume.
What up? What up?
Welcome back. Good to see you again.
It's good to be back. This. Yeah, for sure.
So wanted to. So I told you a couple. I don't know, a week or two ago.
Yeah.
I was thinking, wait, my man is brilliant with the analysis. He's teaching, but he's also talked a little bit about a career.
Yeah.
But I never honestly looked up your actual filmmaker or acting career too closely until the other day, and I found your IMDb. And you've been quite busy over the years. Like you've done and so I admit a fascination, as an outsider, a kind of fascination with filmmaking. And then obviously with the little bit of celebrity, overlap, I saw you in a couple clips with people that I would have recognized and in films that I've even seen at one point, but just never put two and two together. So I wanted to talk with you about that. So can we do like the basic biography thing? Where did you a quick sketch of your life, and then how do you end up well, ultimately as a professor, but with this intermittent or this intervening career? Like,
I mean, there is like definitely several versions of how to tell it. I'll try to do the quickest version, but it actually isn't that quick. I'll be blatantly honest. But I'll probably like introduce a few edges, and then if you want to like dip into those edges later or even during, we can do that. I mean, my history really is I'm from New York City, which I've mentioned before many a time, from uptown. My mother, when I was very young, encouraged me to like be in the arts. So I was in like a children's theater thing with a woman named Dr. Gloria Van Scott. Gloria Van Scott, for people who know theater, was very significant. She worked with a lot of the, I would say, a section of the Black arts culture of like the 60s and the 70s in New York. So Black theater, that was really big. And she had like a children's theater troupe. So I was part of that. So I got into theater and acting very young. I stayed with it kind of intermittently. And then it got very serious in my life. Named Anne Rattray, and she's another story that I won't tell on this one, but she's an interesting person. Interesting in the fact that like that was probably the beginning of my like interesting like life convergence with like lots of people in the acting business. So people that like I train with who are not actors that people know. Not to like name drop and things like that. We want the name drops.
We want the name drops. We want the name drops.
I mean, Anne Wilson Trey's an interesting woman. Like she's like I think like Helen Hunt is like her niece.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, and I trained with like actresses like Merritt Weaver. She was on Nurse Jackie. I knew her since I was a kid, and my homegirl. She's the one who won the Emmys. I didn't watch Nurse Jackie, but she was on the show. She won like 3 Emmys from that. Like
I used to watch that show.
Yeah, she was like I guess like the nurse. She's like younger blonde woman. Merritt and I went to like middle school together. I've known Merritt since we were kids. I mean, we came up acting together. We kind of discovered acting together. With Anne Rattray, my homegirl Ebony Booth, who just won the Pulitzer. She was trained with me. Ebony, shout out to my homegirl. We're still good friends to this day. I love her to death. So yeah, like, and it became part of my life. Then I went to LaGuardia High School, the Fame School, and the many people who come out of there, even during my time, that I've known, not just like in acting, people who went into music, and it was my life. And then I started doing professional work when I was probably about 16. I mean, I was doing some like industrial films and things like that, things that I was thrust into the world of being an actor by Anne Rattray. She like thrust me into the world. You should be a professional. So I got thrust in as a teenager. Did a feature film called Hurricane Streets, which was really significant in like the kind of early Sundance era. It won the audience award, or something like that. I didn't go to Sundance, so I never, for me, a kid growing up in Harlem who ain't got no money, going to Sundance, spending all that money in 1997 was like, what?
Oh, you would have had to pay. They don't
fly you out there. Especially maybe now they would have, but like back then, and I was one of the major casts. All the people had the money. Yeah, that's the flick right there. Right.
Wait, Morgan Freeman? That Morgan Freeman?
Let me tell you the funny. No,
Oh,
but he's an
Jay
interesting
Freeman,
dude
right.
though. He's an interesting dude. So I'll tell you the story about that. When my manager at the time, he says, I got a film you got to look at. They want you to audition. They send me the script and it says Morgan J. Freeman. So my first thought was Morgan Freeman, and I'm like, Morgan Freeman's writing a script about like kids in New York City streets. I had no idea. I was like, what is this? And I thought it was a joke. And then I called the manager or the agent, one of them. It's been years, and they said, no, it's a guy named Morgan J. Freeman. He's white. He's a total white guy. He's not from New York, but and this was like during the kind of 90s, mid 90s New York independent movie scene. So movies like Welcome to the Dollhouse, Todd Solondz, like that. The people who produced this. And Hurricane Streets was kind of a film that kind of got off the energy of like Welcome to the Dollhouse. Brendan Sexton III, who starred in it, was in Welcome to the Dollhouse. And that's kind of their whole crew. And it was part of that scene in the mid 90s where like New York independent film was starting to have a thing. I mean, I think the other film that Hurricane Streets kind of went off the back off of was Kids. Y'all remember Kids?
Oh man, Kids! I remember Kids. I feel like I'm still traumatized by Kids.
You should be.
That movie is. So wait, what's the connection between?
Well, because Kids. So Kids, when Kids came out in like, was it 94? Right?
95, yeah.
So I remember, 94 ringing in my head, because I remember when they were making Kids, they basically were like just looking for people, young actors or young non-actors in New York City. And I remember I got contacted, but through my representation to audition for it. But a lot of agents and people were not into the idea of the movie because they heard about it and they were like, no. So, but the movie was so successful that they wanted more of these, downtown kids, the racial mixture of, white and black and Latino in the streets and all these stories. So Hurricane Streets was honestly a lighter Kids.
Oh, okay.
Like it was Kids Light, and it was very popular on at Sundance. Much to my surprise, but so the guy Morgan J. Freeman, to go back to him, the reason why he's significant is he does this movie, I think his next movie didn't do too well, but he's the dude who created the show 16 and Pregnant.
Oh, wow.
So that whole series of shows is him.
Oh, wow.
That whole series of shows is him. That ended up becoming like his most known legacy. So that's pretty much what he's done. Yeah, that's Morgan right there.
Right,
and I haven't seen him in quite many years. It's been a while since I've seen him. But yeah, like Teen Mom, right? All that type of stuff. Wow, that's all his 16 and Pregnant. That kind of became his whole
gotcha.
Thing. So I did that movie. But an interesting thing to kind of get into, I think, where I've ultimately ended up is right around that time, I also got interested in like Black politics through Black art, through some friends that I had. I had a really good homie who introduced me to like the works of Leroy Jones and Mary Baraka. I was doing my own, looking for stuff. I found I always tell people in my high school library, I found a copy of Eldridge Cleaver's Soul on Ice. Now, what was wild about that was I recognized the title because I was a big Razzcast fan, right?
Wow.
And Soul on Ice, and I was like, "What is this?"
Oh, so you went from Razzcast
to Eldridge.
Wow.
Right. And then I saw the book. I took the book out, and I remember even looking at like the cards where it tells you the last time it's been taken out, and it hadn't been taken out since like the 80s from the library. So I grabbed it because I was like, oh, this has to be what Razzcast is talking about. And I think I actually found an interview with Razzcast where he admitted it. or something like that. He was like, yeah, this dude Eldridge Cleaver, So All Nice. That's where I got the thing from. And I ended up reading that. I have my criticisms of that book now, of course. But I can't lie that it wasn't extremely intriguing. Sure. And then I found out he was a Panther. Mm-hmm. So I got interested in the Panthers. And then right around that time, I had some homies introduce me to Baraka's work. I had heard about the Black Arts Movement. So while I was starting this kind of journey into movie making in like the Hollywood industry, I was personally getting interested in the Black Arts Movement. But this is pre-internet, so you're kind of doing everything on your own. I was really into being an actor, like that was my thing. And then I wanted to find Black plays. Mm-hmm. So I'm finding all these 70s Black plays. I'm finding Dutchman. I'm finding the work of people like Ed Bullins. I'm just getting into it. And that is, I always tell people it was actually looking for that stuff that actually politicized me. Along with like Public Enemy and stuff like that. But like, that's the stuff that like politicized me in a really, powerful way. But then the big glaring thing was I had always realized like none of that existed. I was like, there's no Black Arts Movement now. Mm. The most that we had was August Wilson. And also around that time, August Wilson had started his debate with the white theater scene about, he had a huge debate. I don't know the years, like 99, 2000 with a guy named Robert Brustein. And the big thing became August Wilson was protesting against colorblind casting of all white white plays and making all Black casts. And he was against it. He wanted people producing Black plays about Black people and about Black lineage. And I got really into that debate. I found that debate extremely powerful. And August has had his own contradictions of like working.
Yeah, I'm no expert on his work, but the plays and the movies of his plays, I understand why the machine is happy to have his work.
Yeah,
it's not. Yeah, it was a lot of bootstrapping and a lot of, we're our own enemy and that kind of thing in there.
Yeah.
And,
and while I respected his need for like a Black theater kind of thing, he still had a very bourgeois kind of outlook when it came to it working within the theater. But I will give him credit. He was saying things that other people were absolutely not saying.
Right on.
So I was like, it was getting into my head. So around that time, me and another homie of mine, we had decided that we were going to try to like maybe do our own Black theater, and I was like my senior year of high school, and we were like going to he had did a production of Dutchman the year before, which starred a cat named Damon Gupton, who many people may know, great actor. Shout out to Damon. I haven't seen him in a long time. And actress Morena Baccarin. People might know who she is if they look her up. She's been in quite a few things. And they did that production, and then we kept doing them. We did Baraka's The Toilet the next year, which I played Foots, the lead character in. And it became the thing, and I was having this kind of pursuit and trying to like make like an acting career, but it was all very murky. I was young, I didn't quite know. I can't say I was fully read up on stuff.
So like, just quickly though, like, how does this work though? So like, you're a young man, you decide this is the career you want to get into filmmaking. How does that work then in terms of like, you got an agent? Did you start doing all the stuff we see in movies, sending photos around, the grind of auditions and all of that too?
Yeah, anything you need clarity on, I lived it. Let me know. So so it was weird like that. It was like I had this acting teacher, this white lady. She goes, "Yo, you're interesting. You're good at acting. I'm going to introduce you to an agent. Mm-hmm. I can introduce you to this management company. They want to take me on." They start sending me out to auditions. And honestly, you're young. You don't really know what's what. You're kind of just doing it. I auditioned for all kinds of movies. I think one of the big reasons why they kept saying interested in me was one of my first auditions. I got very far. It was for the movie Remember the movie Dangerous Minds?
Oh yeah, the Michelle Pfeiffer
with
joint,
Michelle Pfeiffer,
the white savior
yeah,
joint.
exactly.
Yeah.
And like I remember, and I mean, this is where if I look back at this stuff, you see the perniciousness of Hollywood. They basically just stuck a bunch of non-white, people of color, all in a room, and it's made you act as ghetto as you could be. That was the audition. Yeah.
So is that what they did? They literally say it, and
they were like these are about street kids, and
and it's like white,
all white age. I mean, casting directors. Well, I'm gonna say a couple of things on that. Casting directors in New York, especially at that time, were heavily all white. A lot of white women running these companies. You did have some black people, but we can get into that in a moment, in another moment.
Okay.
They're not necessarily better, but that's a whole other conversation that we
kind of a running theme around here.
Oh yeah,
the black version isn't always better.
It isn't always
unfortunately,
better.
Yeah.
But they would do this. So you're like sitting in a room. It's like a big old like conference room. There's a camera. This is back, this is old school. There's still videotape. There is no internet. There is no feeds. You have a camera kind of on your face. And I'm in a room with like 15 other really just black and Latino people, to be honest with you, right? In a room. And they're like, we want you to improvise like street kids. So you just go in there, you just improvise your best street kid thing. And the funny thing is, like, I know some of the kids who would do that were not even from the streets.
Yeah.
I'm from the streets, but I wasn't like, no, I'm not no thug. I never did any of that. I'm from uptown. I'm from the inner cities or whatever you want to call, but I didn't do that type of stuff. So I had to kind of give them my best vibe. And I got like few rounds in, because the movie apparently didn't have a script. It was based on a true story, but they had no script yet. And they were trying to like source it out. So I remember I got very far in that. And then the management
I'm sorry to cut you off,
but
that says to me a lot too about the politics of all this.
Of
we don't
course.
even have a script. We don't even have all the actors signed on. We don't even have it all fleshed out yet, but we know this is the story we want to tell, and this is how we want to tell it.
Yeah.
That to me is that's interesting.
It is
deep.
interesting. I mean, hindsight's 2020. Whenever I look at this stuff, it shows you the extractive way, but then like it's extractive in a way that's not even honest. It's a dishonest extraction. They're like taking from it, but then taking a distorted version of what exists there, because we're all performing it. We're not actually that. We're like giving you a performance. So it becomes this real pernicious cycle where you're actually giving them what they want, and they're taking from us also. And it's just funky. I mean, honestly, I felt like it's a blessing that I never ended up in that movie. But it did begin to train me, quote unquote, for the life that I was going to be living as, being an actor. And then what would ultimately become my issues with like the whole thing. So I did that, signed with this manager. I get a pretty good agent. Hurricane Streets was like a big deal for me. Once I got that job, So you do the headshot thing. They make you spend money to get the headshots. Always changing your headshots, and then next thing you know, you're an actor. You're a worker. And I'm like 16. Like this, and this is like a career. I'm going on auditions. I'm missing class here or going after school. It became a regular part of my life by 14 or even 13, honestly. And I'm doing it like consistently. And I'm studying acting in high school. I'm doing other things here, and it was just a part of my life. And it became like my friend groups. I met a lot of people in the acting world around my age who were like already kind of famous.
We're gonna come back to that because I want the name drops and the stories.
Yeah,
and I want the hate if you got no. I'm just playing. But
it might come out though.
I mean, I'm here for it.
Yeah,
but the love too. We always doing the good stuff too.
The love,
but yeah, I definitely want to got a pin to put in that particular point about the people you came across and.
But also on that point, I began to see like the life opportunities.
Mhm.
I'm seeing people 17, got millions of dollars.
That must have been crazy.
Yeah. And then but I already also peeped how weird it was. Like, I'll give you a story. A movie that I was in, they had the it was like a special screening. It had been done. It had just got bought by a major studio. And it was like, we want to do a celebration. So I'm like 17 years old. I go up in there, and the cast is like a bunch of young people and a bunch of older people there. And, I always tell people, like, look, I'm from where I'm from. I have a built-in paranoia of other parts of the world, mainly what I would now call the bourgeois world or the white world or things like that. So I kind of like hung in the back, and hanging in the back, I saw people who were living much older than they needed to be living because they had money, they had access, mixing with people who were older, who had no business being around people that young. And that was one of the early kind of warning signs from myself that this is maybe a thing that I need to tread lightly in. Right. And I'm doing that. I get books like, Soul on Ice, which then brought me to like Revolutionary Suicide. I'm starting to slowly pick things up, and I'm reading Baraka. So by the time I hit 18 and I'm about to go to college, my brain had got super primed to think of this art thing in a more possibly political. What I saw it as like black then, like, being black. That was kind of my thing. The politics really weren't super shaped yet. But they were getting there. So then I went to Purchase College, which is where I actually now teach in the film department. But I went there to the acting BFA, and to get training. And I partly went there because the two heads of the program at the time were black men. Yeah, a man named Israel Hicks, rest in peace, who is a well known in the black theater community. Very, 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 very well known. And a man named Adine Irby, who actually is still there at Purchase. He still helps run the acting program. And they have an Irby as well. He's part of the Negro Ensemble Company. So I went there kind of thinking about, trying to figure out what is this black art thing and and how can it exist then with like 1998. We're going into the 2000s. Purchase, I had a lot of hard lessons there. I probably got more confident in my artistic abilities as I was refining it and what I wanted to do. But at the same token, I got more pushback and what's the word I'm going to look for? I'm trying to say more fight towards what I was trying to do, not just from white people, but for black people. Because then that's when I began to learn about the black bourgeois nature of black art.
Because you mentioned when we were talking that you at one point had higher hopes for the ability for black art to impact black revolution.
Because that became my thought. I think by the time, I'm like 18, 19. I'm learning. I'm training. I'm still working with my homie. We did a production of James Baldwin's Blues to Mr. Charlie, at the National Black Theater before it was the National Black Theater of now. That's another conversation that might happen. But even in that conversation, I would need to look at my facts a little bit because I don't really involve myself with them now. And as I did back then, because I have a lot of criticisms of what they're doing now. But I thought that like, yeah, black art could be like the revolution. That's kind of what I thought. I was like, because I was studying. I think I read like Baraka's Blues People. I read like Larry Neal's big essay on the Black Arts Movement. I was engulfed. I was reading Ed Bullins. I was like looking at all this stuff, New Federal Theater, all of those kind of things. I was super, super engrossed. I started finding some of the black films that were lost, like, Kim's Video in New York. Shout out. I could still get things like Ganja and Hess by Bill Gunn. I could I could still go. That's when I first found Garima's films and things like that. Like, I was starting to find stuff, but researching it, two things I discovered later. Researching it was difficult because I didn't necessarily know where to start. And what's connected to that is the mentorship opportunities with Black radical artists weren't the same because a lot of them had left that. Mm-hmm. Some of them weren't alive. Some of them, weren't as into talking to you, like I mentioned to you, Baraka. Once I knew Baraka was still alive, I was like, I need to get this man to be my mentor. Me and my homie were like that. He's got to become my mentor. And we sought him out several times, and he just wasn't not interested. He just wasn't interested, and always disappointed me. I probably first took it as like, I'm just not worthy. I'm not on his level. I internalized it like, he's sizing me up and he's saying, who's this snot-nosed dude? I'm the real deal. And I probably internalized that a little bit on my own. But then as I aged, I realized he had his own complications. Plus, shout out to some people that I knew, like shout out to family member Michael Simmons. I know a lot of y'all know his name. Michael, he knew Baraka, and Michael told me, he's like, Baraka's a complicated brother. And he was saying like,
you know what? That's what I forgot to have happen yesterday.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Now that I'm thinking about it, Mr. Porter was here, and he was real tight with Baraka. And we had talked about it too. Now I'm even more irritated that I forgot.
Oh no, all good.
To make sure that happened because, damn, that's a missed opportunity. But anyway.
Yeah. So and I'm in Purchase, and I'm in this program learning how to act, and I became really defiant against the kind of status quo system of theater, and but I had no real mentors in how to be a Black political artist, and that was real rough. And I could sense that. I was looking for him. I tried to hook up with Ed Bullins once. We had a thing going back and forth for him. And that didn't work out. And look, I don't say this to like make them look bad or anything like that. I think I'm just going to paint a picture. I think we talk about what happened to the movements and how the movements by a certain time they became very fractured. And I think in that late 90s, early aughts period, it was just tough. Yeah. Like I watched a great doc on the Black Arts Movement, made by Woody King Jr. actually. And one of the things that was said in it by Ed Bullins was, I think we talked about this offline once via text when Bullins was talking about how Nixon killed all the funding of all this stuff, in the 70s. But the first thing that hit my head when I read that is like, or I saw him say that, I was like, so all that was funded? So like so much of that Black art of that period was actually funded by the state, and it's not to like make that look bad, but to make us think about like how it actually happened.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know to what extent there's this overlap, but I remember when I was doing my thesis on Dr. Clark and the HARU Act projects, the Harlem Youth Academy, I forgot what, but all of that was funded through I think the Johnson administration initially, so there are all these contradictions of maybe unintended consequences on the part of the government where some of these things opened up avenues for consciousness that they had not designed. But the reality is without that, I mean, my man, when Dr. Burroughs talks about the benefactor relationship, even in the Harlem Renaissance, like a lot of our favorite people we wouldn't have known of if they didn't have white sponsors and funding. So it's just another ongoing problem and contradiction. But it's anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the phrase "unintended consequences" I think is apt. Like, I think Nixon recognized that. He's like, all right,
he definitely
because of the kind of liberal notion of give back. Let's give this these resources to these Black theater people. But at that time, these Black theater people and some of the white theater people were into left politics and anti-imperialist, anti-communist, pro-communist politics. And then Nixon was like, no. We not having that here no more.
That wasn't the plan.
That was not the plan here. We want that. We want that capitalism, that Black capitalism, right? We got to make that happen. So by the 70s, there was a lack of infrastructure and people just lost their way. And by the time that I'm coming in, like the late 90s, it's about 20 something years of just like not being able to do that they were doing back then. So, I say all this to say, like, I understand, right? I understand why it was difficult. I think for a lot of them, it was like, what can I actually give you? Right.
But I also think it's important for us to think about it as we're aging and how we might come into play with all of this, that because you're right. I mean, it's not just to dog out a Barack or anyone else, but there are people we've met at certain points in their life and our lives where they weren't situated, maybe is a better way of putting it, to give us the help we were looking for.
Right.
And I do think as I'm getting older, I need to be at times a little more mindful of that too, because it is starting to happen where younger generations are looking to my generation and people, even me at times, saying, I help me out. And there are moments where it's like, man, I don't have anything for you. I'm not situated in this moment to be of help. But it's something I think I'll just speak for myself. It is a helpful reminder, given some of my own experiences and some of that you're sharing.
Yeah,
that I don't want somebody years from now thinking, man, that dude Jared was all right, but then I met him. I asked him for some help. And he was like, beat it, kid. Like, get out of here.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, no, but I think that's the point. Like, the point stands. Like, for me, that I take it as also like, maybe I do have something to give them. Maybe all they really need is my time.
Right, that's it, yeah.
They need my time in my ear. Like, I think about that. Like, if one of them, like, or like the times that Ed Bullins did sit with us, was really, or a cat named Marvin X. I always went after Deruba. Does he know Marvin? I feel like Deruba knew Marvin X.
Another good excuse to reach out to Deruba.
Exactly.
Just keep them coming.
Yeah. Well, because that's all New York, stuff. And I think Marvin was in the New York Pants. I know Ed Bullins was, so like, but like it's just like when they sat with us, I was like, this is I'm just grateful, even grateful for the encouragement. And then so like I saw the contradictions in college. I was very passionate about my craft of acting, so I was very serious. When I was in school at acting, any of my contemporaries who knew me when I was there, I was no joke with it. You could never get me down on like the craft and what I was doing, but I was a political hothead in college. I was, because then I started to read. I was reading Brecht. I was reading more Baraka. I was getting smarter. I started to actually read some actual politics, stuff like that, like more getting out of just the art. I was I would just pick up stuff, and I think I read, like, was it Albert Memmi, Colonizing the Colonized? Like, I got that. I started just jumping into stuff, things that I would just find, or someone would tell me, I would just grab it. And I became a political hothead in school, and it caused me problems with classmates, with school uppers, but I did my thing. I graduated. And then when I graduated, there was definitely a limbo moment for a few years, because there was a real difficulty in trying to create a kind of political Black art movement, especially with like 2002. But I was like, all right, I'll do the acting thing for a while, more straight, see what kind of happens, and do. And I did it for a few years. I worked a lot. I did a lot of movies. I did a lot of theater. I did some films. But as I got older and I got smarter, I began to recognize just how racist the acting business was, or the movie business was. Like, you know, from the way agents would talk to you, to, and it's mostly white people, the way they would treat me, their expectations of me in terms of how I needed to always have a presence of being grateful for them recognizing me. Like they were doing me a favor, bringing me out. I mean, there was a very like real paternalistic or maternalistic thing of like, we are your parents in a way. Like you'd still be back there in the gutter if you didn't have this opportunity. We're bringing you downtown. I totally.
So it's interesting because you're bringing up something that I think we hear less of when we hear people tell their stories. We often, especially nowadays, and especially in a lot of the media, for instance, that targets my students. This is one reason I wanted to ask you this question. Is we're encouraged to hear about the doors. So we don't hear about the racism, that impact as much as we hear about the invitations to what's the word? The sacrifices and behave this way sexually at a party if you want to be put on and all of that kind of stuff. To what extent are these forces exaggerated, or would you say that that's also part of what people are expected to do if they want to be successful? Like in addition to enduring the micro and macro aggressions racially, you know?
I mean, look, it's totally real. Like,
oh wow,
it's
okay.
totally, all that stuff is totally real. Like, so one of the very funny things, and like, you know, both of these stories that I'm about to share are totally fine to share now because like I was told these things before they were even known. Like, like the whole thing with Kevin Spacey, I tell everybody all the time, it was a running joke. I know Anthony Rapp. Anthony can confirm. Anthony told that story in public before.
Wow.
It wasn't like a new thing he wrote out about Kevin Spacey.
And these are the
one of the accusers. He's the primary accuser. Who's an actor, right? Of Spacey. Told this story in like 2002. I had heard this already. Like this was not like a new revelation. I tell everybody this all the time, and multiple things with his conduct, but also not just him. You know, the Weinstein stuff. I have multiple things with the Weinstein thing because the Weinstein thing, you know, on the back end, I definitely did hear from people who worked in the business who said they had awarenesses of it or they wouldn't bring their clients to him and so forth and so on. But my thing with Harvey Weinstein was he was consistently given a pass for being on record abusive to filmmakers, abusive to actors, abusive to the
and we're
people.
Talking about abuse in a non-sexual,
just work
hostility.
I mean, there is a famous on-record story of how he verbally abused Bernardo Bertolucci when they were doing The Last Emperor. It's on like just an abusive individual. And if you look back at things like Meryl Streep saying, "Oh, we know Harvey's a bull, but he gets the job done." Right? There was a celebration of a certain kind of person. And I say all this to say that, yeah, these attitudes of being completely crass, sexist, racist, classist were given passes if you got the job done. So if you had an agent who said inappropriate things, but, you know, got you a gig, got you through here, you had to ignore it because they got the job done. And you were made to feel grateful for the fact that they got you a job. And this is the mentality of the whole thing that's so screwy because it's a, you know, I mean, I don't want to use like slave master, but there's a kind of taken hostage mentality that exists with it. This person is the controller of you. And even though you went out there and you did your thing, the person that you're so grateful for is your agent or your manager who's just part of a matrix of weird stuff that 99% of the time they can't take any real credit for other than having been in the position to be there at the moment. They can't take really more credit than you can. It's BS, right? And there's this way that you have to constantly be deferring. You see it all the time. And I got sick of it because, I mean, consistent racism, consistent disrespect. You know, I had an agent because I didn't want to audition for something that I felt was offensive, and they got mad at me. You know? And she said to me, she's like, well, you know, Mtume, this is the business. You know, and I know you're into these political things, but, you know, you're going to have to make a choice. And there's a white lady saying this to me. And I'm like, and I said to her, I think I said to her, or I said to somebody who worked there that, like, look, white ladies don't scare me. So, like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Like, you don't scare me. Like, this is not, you're not gonna like scare me.
No, but I mean, but at the same time, and no disrespect, but you're down here with me as the lowly professor now. Like you're not, you know, that's what I'm saying. So it's like it's I get it. It's not about being afraid of, but it's also acknowledging that there are going to be consequences.
100%. And that's something that I didn't realize, right? On the back end. So
because you're like, they can't stop this shine.
Well, that's kind of what it came to. Yeah. So I was like, they can't stop this shine. And I became very individualistic. I think in that moment I became kind of, my thing is gonna be the thing. And I had a rude awakening because I did a film when I did Carlito's Way, Rise to Power. Right. I thought, well, this is gonna be the catapult.
This is it. This
is gonna be the catapult. It'll catapult me.
I made it.
I did the film, had a big role. You know,
and this is maybe we'll save this. We should say
for another time.
This guy, no, not for another time, but for the Patreon or something. We gotta get to because there he is.
Yeah, and I mean, I was around him, and I tell people, I said, I have no salacious stories about Puff, but I can really tell you what being around him, like, he's not a likable person at all. Like, he was not a likable person. And I can speak for a couple of homies who were on that set, like Louis Guzman and Casper Martinez. They didn't particularly care for him either, you know. And I know they've already said it publicly, so you know, I'm not adding anything to the record. But yeah, so
just real quick, did you know at the time? Did they tell you at the time that this is not expected to be you know, touted as much as even the original? Do they tell you?
No, I mean, they don't know. I mean, they hope.
They thought, or they expected it was going to continue at that level of.
They hoped. I mean, the film. I'll say one thing about this film that I know for a fact. So many people probably don't realize. So remember American Gangster? American Gangster was originally supposed to be directed by Antoine Fuqua. Yes.
Really?
Yes. And it was starring Benicio del Toro in Russell Crowe's role. Denzel was still on it. Remember, because this is off the heels.
Hold on. Okay, wait a minute. First of all, I just made a mistake. So I was thinking, for some reason, I started thinking of American Me.
American Gangster.
Very different movie.
Yeah.
American Gangster. Denzel. So you're saying it was going to be Denzel and Benicio del Toro?
Yeah. Del Toro was going to be in Russell Crowe's role. And it was directed by Antoine Fuqua because, remember, he was in good standing because they just did Training Day a few years back.
Right.
There was a thing that I can't remember. People can Google it. There was a thing with Fuqua around that time where he lost the gig. They tried to say he overspent on the money. You might have to do a little bit of digging about it. But there was a thing. The film got canned. They were about to go shoot. The shoot got canned. Right. I think Ridley Scott's company was producing it, or whoever was the producers stayed on it, and they ended up doing it later. But because of that, Universal at the time had a big gap. They needed to fill. They had bought. I mean, they were like a month out from shooting. They had like bought clothes. They had bought tons of stuff. So the director Michael Bregman, who is the son of a guy named Martin Bregman. People who know movies, Martin Bregman was a huge producer because Martin Bregman was Al Pacino's longtime manager. And Martin Bregman was the lead producer for movies like Scarface, Dog Day Afternoon, Serpico, and the original Carlito's Way, amongst other Al Pacino movies. So they still had a kind of connection. So they were able to use the American Gangster gap that it was not going to come out that time to then weave in this Carlito's Way film, which was much lower budget, much less resources. And they basically apparently we had got like most of the clothes from America that American Gangster had purchased. And we were able to use it for our film. So it was partly opportunistic. Right. And I think they hoped, they don't know, they shoot a thing. And then, I think they looked at the dailies like, this movie's not that good. It went straight to video.
Yeah, that's right. And then when I see Puffy showing up, that's what I was thinking. They're not taking this.
Yeah, it's not. It wasn't the budget. I think I honestly can't remember what it was shot for. I know it wasn't shot for a ton. And they got Puffy for that because he was trying to become an actor.
Right.
At that time, I don't think he had done the Raisin in the Sun play yet on Broadway with Felicia Rashad. I think he did that right after. I could be wrong. If anything, it's around that same time. But so this movie ends up being, a thing that can fill in the slot. Do they know? They don't. I don't think they know. I didn't have much thoughts that it would become some hit. Not at all. I think for me, for an actor, it's always you get big roles. So this was like my first, I think what was it, top 6. I was in like the first 6 or 7 people, or like somewhere on like the billing list, of where you're on it, and I'm a major pivotal role in the film. So I was like, well, I can use this to kind of catapult a career forward. And I've been working. I have been on, I also forgot to mention I was on Oz for 2 years, or a year and a half.
Now
I totally missed past that one.
And I completely forgot about that.
Yeah.
I definitely watched that show and it's interesting you played your Reggie in both. That's
Ain't that funny, right? Yeah. And I did Oz right out of college. Like I got I was actually still in college when I did the 5th season, and I graduated and did, that. And, I was like, that was part of the reason where I was like, you know what, let me just go in and try to do this acting thing. And I think I had in my head I'll do my business stuff until I'm stable, and then I'll become then I'll do the revolution.
Right. But you also, it also must have felt, it must have felt pretty good. You're getting these are not no roles.
Yeah, and I'm able to work.
Yeah.
I'm able to work. I'm able to pay my bills. Part of it is like I got a job.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I got a job. It is what it is. And
Oz must have been wild. That show was wild.
The weirdest thing about Oz is weird, just construct of a show. What comes out was really weird, but the set is actually the most mild place I had ever been on.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Interesting.
It was mild. It was like whatever. It was a bunch of dudes just hanging out. They
are. I gotta remember they are acting.
And I think there has to be a thing. If you're doing a show about prison, you kind of gotta relax.
When you're not on,
on camera.
You gotta.
Yeah.
They weren't doing the whole method acting.
No,
thing,
no one was. Some people were playing like we're doing something they would do, but they would do some funny stuff, but it would be like under the guise of comedy. But
right.
I met some really interesting people on that show. From like Michael Wright to Leon, to Chuck Zito. That's a wild cat right there. I met that dude. Lots of it was that's you just learn about how weird of America and the acting business is. Because that's when I began to realize the acting business just isn't actors. It's a lot of people who are living their life off of a kind of look and a personality. In a brand, really the early stages of what we later would call a brand.
Yeah.
And developing a brand. Like Chuck Zito is a Hell's Angel, and then he was a bodyguard, and then he had a look, and they just made him into an actor, and he's like, that's gonna be my life now. And he's not an actor. Chuck would tell you that he's not an actor. But I'm an actor in the movie business, and I'm gonna ride this wave and do it as long as I can.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, why not?
And then, so that, and then after the Carlitos Way thing, the rude awakening that I got was, the agent that I had, I was a hothead with her, and often, and I would let her know what was what, and when it came to kind of help pushing me forward, she just didn't want to do it. She just didn't want to do it. She was like, "No, I'm good." So then I had to scramble for a little bit to kind of find new agents. I was in Los Angeles, and then I hit a wall. I said, I don't want to do this. I hate this. I'm reading stuff. I'm getting a little smarter. I'm seeing scripts. They're all terrible. I'm watching better films. I'm just like, I can't. So I quit for a while. I quit. I had I was part of the hip hop community in New York. I was doing music, rapping a little bit. I started doing some theater again. Shout out to my people at Universes. I did some work with them, and I kind of scrambled along doing different stuff. I got into education, writing, poetry, stuff like that with like students. And I kind of spent the rest, honestly, of the aughts working in doing art in various experimental ways. But I honestly wanted nothing to do with the movie business. Nothing. I loved acting, but I hated it. I found it racist. I found the imagery that they put out to be absolutely abhorrent. I saw too many weird things with people. As far as things that we would later find out to be criminal, or predatory. I saw a lot of it, and I was just like, I just don't want to be here, and I don't want to beg to be in it. And when I got out of it, my politics began to get a lot more, succinct. I started calling myself a socialist or a Marxist by that point, being more willing to kind of embrace those kinds of means and things like that. And then I wanted to do a kind of political art thing. But honestly, I felt by that time, you're talking about 2006 to 2010, or even into the 2010s, like it was just the idea of political left art just wasn't really a community thing. There were individuals who were doing things here and there, but kind of creating movements, art movements that I was really interested in, like the Black arts movements that were based on like kind of like left-wing political notion. It was not there.
So then are you saying, are we to understand that anyone who has a sustained career and becomes quote unquote successful has to have been willing to consciously suppress certain politics, consciously avoid? Is there a way to be Denzel and avoid what you're talking about?
No.
Okay, yeah, that's
no, absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. You have to suppress something. I'm sorry, proof is in the pudding. I'm sorry, proof is in the pudding. Like, look, are there really left wing?
Like, could a young Black or whoever actor theoretically find that agent that's not disrespectful, can work with people that aren't predatory on some level, can avoid, I will even say the macro. I'm assuming nobody can avoid microaggressions on all levels, but more of the macro. Could it be argued? Could somebody say, well, Mtume's been out the game too long, and now it's different, and you can,
Well, now I'm a filmmaker, and I know the game is not different. I'm not out the game completely. I now have to hire actors, and I now deal with their agents. So that's one level. Well, here's what I would say: are all agents criminal? No, I wouldn't say. Are all agents, managers, casting directors sexual predators? No, I would never say that. Have all of them, for a certain amount of time, who've worked in the business, turned their eye to it? Yes. Yes, of course. Are they part of a predatory system? when it comes to exploiting artists, actors, individuals, yes, it's an exploitive system. They're all a part of it. It is an exploitive system. Like, because this is the problem. They want to, like, I think about someone like Corey Haim, right? Or Corey Feldman, all those people, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a way to kind of want to like make it into like there was like this weird cabal of people who, manipulated them. I mean, yeah, there was this cabal of like individuals who did the actual acts, but they were only able to be a cabal because of a pernicious system that would allow that to exist. So like I've never liked those arguments, right? That it's just this small little clandestine group, and if we take them out,
It'll be all good.
everything will be okay. No, and it's like I think with the Weinstein argument, y'all were fine with him being an exploitive boss and a mean boss, but then when you found out he was a criminal, he suddenly became a problem. I was like, honestly, if Harvey Weinstein never sexually assaulted a woman, he was still a terrible problem. He was a terrible problem. He was horrible, right? He was horrible to people, and he's had horrible precedents in the business of movie making. And that's the other thing. It's the business, because it's business culture. You're dealing with business. You're dealing with capitalism. Hollywood is a capitalist place. It's a place of capitalist realism, like 100%. And it's exploitive. And then on the flip side, yes, you do have to suppress. They tell you this. I mean, I remember a homie of mine, he did something. He was in a movie with Denzel. I think it was, I can't remember which one it was. And he said he had a conference with Denzel, and Denzel told him to watch what he said in public, politically. And I've had famous black actors tell me that stuff when they want to give you the mentor moment. Give you the mentor moment. Like, let you know, I know you into this, but you got to
Because isn't that supposed to have been with the role Sidney Poitier was playing for everybody?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's what I was.
You've already told us he don't like working with black directors.
And then it's funny. And then after sitting with Charles Burnett, I now believe that story to be 100% true. 100% true. After sitting with Burnett, like it makes complete sense. And so yeah, so I was out for a while, and I it was, some of it was like my own personal selectiveness. And, I went to Europe for a while. I got into this thing of just trying to be like an artist on my own, which I have my own criticisms of, because one of the things, and we've talked about this offline, and you've said this also, is like, I definitely did convince myself that my political contribution to the revolution could just be art. And I think I lived in that for like longer than I would like to admit. Longer than I would like to admit. And I flipped around a lot, did a lot of things, and essentially kind of how I got to filmmaking was I actually wanted to go back to the theater initially. I thought about becoming a theater director. I had wrote a play. I co-wrote a play that was in the UK, and it's called Fields of Grey with my homie Avaiz Mohammed. Shout out to him. And it got the dramatics bug back in me. So I was like, let's try to make films. And I didn't want to go to film school because I didn't want to pay the money, and I also couldn't afford it. So I did it, I feel like, the classical way. I sat on a bunch of sets. I had also realized I've been on a bunch of sets in my life. I studied cinema, whether it was via texts, whether it was being on sets. And I started just making my own shorts around 2014 is when it started. And I kind of never looked back. And that became my passion and dedication. And it was also my last real dance with Hollywood again, because then my next thing I had to kind of deal with this kind of farce that's called independent art in the US, which is gonna like ruffle some feathers.
Why is it? What's wrong with what's the matter with the independent art?
Because there is no real material analysis when it comes to what independence is in a capitalist system. You can't be independent, right? And, I'm going to totally mess up his phrasing, but Globo Rocha has a great thing where he says, for an artist to be independent, he has to step into the political arena. He talked about that. He said the conquest for an independent art is a political one. I wish I had the quote in front of me. It's in a book. It's dug up, and I was lucky by the time I got into filmmaking that my studies around politics and then political art got a lot stronger. So I knew people like Roca and Osman Semben. I was studying Semben. I was studying a lot of the decolonial African filmmakers, like Semben and Mambete. I started looking at things like Cinema Novo in Brazil. So when I stepped into making films, I was stepping into it from a very political realm, right? Thinking about how to make a kind of art that would express the kind of decolonial politics that I was like messing with, right? But my mistake was I was like, okay, well, let's do that and then put it in the film festivals. Let's see what happens.
You said this was a mistake.
Totally a mistake. It worked for me for a little bit until my films got better and more political. Right. And I wanted to make more statements. And then people see not wanting to work with you. Festivals not programming you. And I'm not talking about white ones. I'm talking about black ones.
Black festivals.
Oh, hell yeah. The black, but that's when I had to then wrestle with that. I call it Negro liberalism. Like, it's just, it's the black bourgeoisie, the Black Film Festival Network and the Black Artistic Network more than ever is a haven for black bourgeois politics. Like 100%. It is all professional managerial class aspirational zone. And more now than ever because it is my thought that the realm of culture, whether it be media, I think you might agree with this, whether it be media, arts, is where a lot of the black professional managerial class has decided to go. Because I think a lot of money is there, right? You see it. People who were once lawyers becoming media pundits, right? Then they're signing book deals. They're trying to do TV series. This mass production of culture has become a place for the professional managerial class of black people. And I see it, right? And it's not a place where radical left politics from black people is welcomed. They like black culture as an accoutrement. They want the kente cloth, and they want the dreadlocks. They even want to say Pan-African sometimes, but then you bring in a Kwame Tureist black Pan-African politics or scientific socialism, but they're like, well, come on, man.
That's not what I mean.
That's not what I mean. I mean, just, a black person from America, a black person from Jamaica, and a black person from the continent.
So it'd be like the Pan-African Bechdel test. Can you have 3 diasporan Africans talk to one another on screen without actually dealing with scientific socialism and actual liberation? There you go.
That's perfect. There you go. Right. And they don't want any of that. Right. And I was getting constant pushback, multitude of levels, a lot less support. I would put these things out of wanting to make these films to to people that I know in Hollywood. Because like I said, I know a lot of people. People that I came up with in those years are now working in the business. They now have thriving careers. And, like times people would give me a little bit of cash to make a movie here, but it would never be a sustained relationship. It would never be, well, let's do this. You're trying to create something. Let's do this. And, or I would get, and I even pitched a few things that I knew would never work. I once pitched to someone. I said, I want to do a fictional series just about. It wouldn't have been like Judas and the Black Messiah. It would have been something like, I want to pitch a fictional series of these movements and like, how they get, like each year would be a different movement and you would pitch how they would infiltrate it. And, and it'd be all about their politics. And I'm going to go into like the politics of each movement in a real in-depth way and all this. And they looked at me like I was crazy. I said, it'd be cool. It'd be like The Wire. Every season you'd have a new place and a new thing, and you see how it was did it, and you get the politics, you get all of it. It'd be really interesting series. And they were like, because I kept talking about the politics.
Because you would have to get into the politics.
Yeah,
that's not.
It's not. I said I didn't mention about weird relationships, or the beef between these two factions, and pitched it as some kind of fratricide between two things. Like, no, I was like, no, it's about political struggle and things like that. And they're like, what? No, their brain starts frying. And so it's situated me in an interesting place. And I've actually given you my long kind of trip, kind of how, but like there's a lot of holes there. There's a lot of things that I haven't said, or like mostly for the brevity of time.
I mean, obviously we'll do. I mean, we can't get all of it in one sitting, but
no, more questions if you have anything specific.
Yeah, I mean, I admit I'm interested in some of the celebrity stuff. You have come across with a lot of people that we would know, both for good and bad. So you mentioned obviously Diddy and that kind of, but first of all, you said what's his name? Guzman was in
Louis. Yeah,
he's been in a lot of stuff.
Lovely brother,
and he seems like a pretty cool dude. I have to admit, when I've seen him in interviews and whatnot, he
lovely
seems like a
brother.
pretty good dude.
I mean, honestly, lovely brother. Every time I've reached out to Louis, he says, "What's up?" Lovely brother.
Just so people will remember, because I know people might not
Louis
remember
Guzman.
You've definitely seen something he's been in. He's been in so many different things. But
my lasting impression of Louis will always be this: we were on a set of Carlito's Way: Rise to Power, and Puff was doing a scene. One of Puff's biggest characteristics on that set was he wouldn't talk to nobody. We'd all be on the set, Mario Van Peebles, me, and Puff just would sit in his trailer. He wouldn't consort with us. We just were unimportant. And, I'm a nobody. Okay, But I think for people like Mario and Louis, that didn't smell. I don't want to speak for Mario. I know for Louis, that didn't sit right with him. Louis is a veteran. You know what I'm saying? It's like, homie, you come in and you say hi. You say what's up. So Puffy's shooting this scene and he's taking forever, right? He's making me late for something, actually. I was shooting in the morning. And Louis is just like he's just like, this is not acceptable. He was just letting people know this is unacceptable, speaking for the crew, standing up for people in the whole entire thing. And I was like, man, Louis is that dude. I had to give him mad props. But also I have to say, acting with him, incredible. This dude, I was on set watching him do a scene that I wasn't in, and he was improvising it during it, and I had to leave. I said, because I can't stop laughing. I told him, I was like, I'm gonna have to watch it after. Tell me when they do the playback, because I can't. He keeps adding new things. Like being on, and the one scene we had together, man, I had to be, constantly on. He's an actor, man. Like he's a performer, and I love him. Like he was a great guy to work with, and like the Puff thing, I tell people, I said, I know nothing salacious. All I know is this dude was an absolute, like, he's just.
And then you've also mentioned to me about Chadwick Boseman. You crossed paths with him as well.
Chad and I worked together actually in a school. Yeah, we worked together in a school. And Chad, we worked together at Urban Assembly School of Music and Art, and Chad was in the theater scene in New York before he got famous. My recollection is after he left Howard, or he graduated from Howard. He came up to New York. And Chad's whole thing is he wanted to do theater. He wanted to like be a theater actor. I mean, a theater director, excuse me. Right. And I remember he was saying that to me, and that was like his thing. And he was, but he was like this thing is like the rest of us. He's auditioning, hitting the pavement, and, he started to like, percolate. I mean, really nice guy. He was definitely someone that his politics I could never really parse out because I think he got that Denzel talk. And I think he got that line of if he had certain viewpoints, don't say it. I personally think that's part of the reason why he was so successful. For Chad, like it's not necessarily about your skills on the camera. This is not talking about his like skill level so much as like, are you agreeable? Are you gonna like do the right PR? Because is that being strong actor or even interesting to people isn't just the whole thing. It's about, can they do the right PR? Are they going to keep their nose clean? If they don't keep their nose clean, is it something that we can control and use? Right? Is it a bad boy image that, and I honestly think currently the bad boy thing really isn't in. And I mean Puffy more like bad boy image, like right. Sean Penn.
Well, I was even thinking in the black context of Sam Jackson,
right?
Sam presents himself, and he's even said in interviews, "I will let you know," as he said, "I'm that nigga," in one of these, and then and I'm like, well, how does that play out in the day-to-day business unless that's what they want from black actors?
Yeah.
And I've always wondered, about him in particular. At one point he had said years ago, I don't know if you remember this, but he had said years ago that he was resistant to this whole wave of putting rappers in movies because he wanted actual actors. And he respected the theater tradition. Then obviously that's not going to last. He ended up doing what he was in with movies with LL and Ice Cube and everybody basically. But I also was wondering if there's if the white gaze is seeking GAZE gaze is seeking that kind of black performance, they would love that.
100%.
And his willingness to even do the Tarantino thing of the N-word and everybody can say like, yeah,
Well, that's the part. I think there's two things with Sam. I think he does present a sort of acceptable black militancy. It's
not a political militancy.
Yeah, it's not exactly.
It's a thuggery,
it's a thuggery or a it's a, I don't know how to characterize it. It's like it's why they also like having black principles in movies. This kind of strong, the idea of like black men who are tall, because Sam's a pretty tall guy. He can have a kind of like stature and, be no nonsense. The kind of the authoritarian figure, right? So they like this kind of authoritarian thing. And then I think also by keeping someone like Sam Jackson, who doesn't really have any strong politics around, it makes it seem like they're listening to black people, right? And listening to black concerns,
authentic
black people. But then I think the Tarantino thing then also shows how compromised he is. And I think they think it's funny that the black person who wants to talk about black this, I'm black this, will literally have a racist like Quentin Tarantino, using him like a toy in movies.
And then what are you going to say? Because if anybody walks in and says, man, that stuff is a mess, they can always say, well, who's blacker than Sam?
Exactly.
Sam is cool with it. So
exactly. Right. He's cool with it.
Yeah, so
and I think it's not just Sam. Like, I feel like there's a way that a lot of black actors have helped reinforce Hollywood by the need for them to give an idea, look like I've never compromised. Like Denzel will act like he's never compromised himself. Larry Fishburne will probably say the same.
Again, as I've said to people, Denzel has played two of my favorite people in world history in very poor renditions in films. Not necessarily, I'm not commenting on his acting. Politically, the films are terrible. The Cry Freedom joint, and Malcolm X are just unacceptable for me.
100. I'm with you.
But I also am old enough to remember his early career where he did that. Remember, he was the black son of the white dude. I think we've even talked about that before. In that early movie, like he did the I gotta do the thing to get the thing. I mean, he did the whole silly, goofy race thing, and then he also apparently, what I'm assuming was some sort of contractual thing where he doesn't get to kiss the white lead, so like Pelican Brief, because you know damn well if that was a white actor, when she spends the night in that hotel room, that's a sex scene.
Of course.
So, but in that movie,
that was Michael. If it was Clint Eastwood,
right.
Like,
regardless of age, that's right. As long as a white man of any age could have been 150. And would have absolutely, even if they did it the nice way, they would have cut to, we would have seen him taking a shower in the morning, or he's getting out of bed in a towel or something.
Exactly.
We would have seen something. But she said, no, would you please stay on the couch? I'll never, even as a young man, I was like, okay, now I was like, oh, about to Denzel. I was like, not that I wanted it, but I was like, okay, it's about to be, they was sleep on the couch. I was like, sleep on the couch.
Well, I always say like even at the first Beverly Hills Cop, which I heard was rumored to have been written for Sylvester Stallone, or he was supposed to be in it.
That's interesting.
It wasn't going to be
that wasn't going to be
Eddie.
An Eddie thing.
But I was like, okay, look, this script was definitely at one point. Dude leaves Detroit, goes to LA, sees his good-looking friend, right? And they're just homies.
Oh, that's
right. You know there was a love plot in there. I mean, Eddie in those early movies, I mean, even in Golden Child, like you said, they cut and then they see them after. Right. They at least give you that.
They give you that, but there's no physical.
They had a way. And I think Eddie talked about that in those early movies. He was like he saw what they were doing with him in that way of not making him a kind of sexual being in that way.
That's right.
You know, but then they made him constantly talk about sex.
Oh yeah.
And invoke sex. In these crude sex things, right? You know, like I know in 48 Hours they let him, do it at the end of the movie. But 48 Hours is Thea Diawara has a great. I don't know if anyone's ever read his essay.
No. On that movie.
Yeah, I used
to.
Man,
we gotta. Yeah, I want us to get back to that when you get time. Assign the essay, and then we'll come and talk. I would love to. See
it's
that.
on. It's his thing on the black on the white gaze towards blackness. It's great,
but he doesn't have. Who would have been the love interest for him?
No, there was no love interest. I'm talking more in a sense of how we relate to Eddie Murphy.
Okay, because at the end of the movie, he's allowed to have that.
That's what I mean. He was allowed
with a black woman,
but that's all it is,
and it's off camera.
And that's kind of my point. I was like, he has no love interest in 40. He doesn't come out. I got this woman that I want to go see. I'm in love with her, right?
No, he just wants to go find the car.
He basically just goes. That's his love interest. The money, right?
That's deep.
And that's what Diawara's whole thing in his essay is 48 Hours is this putting the Negro in the place fantasy. Because you see that there's
Nick Nolte gets to call him an N-word and punch him in the face. Get the last punch
and
all
then
at
the end, Eddie says, "Thank you, Jack. Thank you, Jack."
You're right.
Right? The end of the fight. Who gets the last hit? Boom.
He gets the
Eddie,
last hit.
Right?
No. I thought Nick got the last.
I mean, that's what I meant. Nick Nolte.
He takes the last punch.
He takes the last punch. The last. I'm like, oh man, and you see it. But Diawara even talks about the Eddie's famous scene, which I will say, Eddie plays the hell out of that scene with the rednecks.
The Cowboys.
Right, but what happens at the end of it when he steals the gun? Nolte at the back end says, "Give me the gun back." He constantly has to rein him in. Oh,
with that kind of, I see what you're trying to do. You can't get over on me, convict.
Yeah, exactly. You can't get over on me.
And so I know he wasn't calling him convict in the original script either, or in whatever it's supposed to be.
They had to cut. I mean, honestly, and if you know the director Walter Hill, if you look at his track record of movies, really ugly conservative streak in terms of his politics. It's all written in it,
the unspeaking Indian.
Yes. Yeah, I mean the Latino who's not a Latino, like they love doing that, man.
Oh man, that's right.
It's so there's so much in that movie. And that was the thing I said with the acting, but I began to see this stuff and I And I would see scripts like that. I always go back to Hollywood Shuffle. We we want an Eddie Murphy type, and I've heard stuff like that. Or they would always try to find. I always love this when I would go into a manager meeting. They'd go, "You look like one of those really good actors," and I feel like you don't want to like be like one of the I don't want to be racist like one of the famous black actors. You want to be someone else. You want to be like a Sean Penn. And I said, man, I'm thinking in my head, you've been racist in about 5 or 6 different ways in that state. the amount of racism that went in that statement, But like I said, there has to be a kind of, I don't know, you can call it like white supremacist realism that has to get in your head to kind of live in that business. It's because it's bourgeois aspirations.
So is there any flaw in what Baruch Gottlieb is called my iron triangle of you can't be rich, famous, and radically political at the same time?
No.
Do you see that?
No, I mean,
consistent, or do you see a way
Jared,
around that?
I'm gonna say this, like in all honesty, people like yourself have helped me do 2 things. Accept what I felt in my heart is probably true, right? And then be able to kind of say, well, then what do we do because of that? Because, I used to say these things to people and I would get people to be like, man, you're too cynical. You're too cynical.
Well, first of all, show me where it's wrong. That's why I'm asking you. Like, if it's raw, I need to be shown. But the second thing, first of all, I appreciate that. I'm glad I can contribute because what you've done for me analytically, and when you caught me with the American Fiction joint, it's like I don't know, it's like a positive, powerful, humbling. I mean, so I respect when I can be shown the error of my ways so convincingly. So I appreciate that. But yeah, I am. I mean, again, I am waiting. I do, and especially I'm probably gonna clip that for my classes because the students, obviously young people come in and we don't know what's going on yet. And a lot of us think because what you said about your career, I had a version of my entrance into what I thought was going to be revolution. I was like, okay, now I'm here, everybody. I'm the missing piece. Like, obviously, you've all just been waiting for Jared to show up. And there's that kind of, I know you all haven't gotten there yet, but I'm now here.
Yeah.
So now we can get busy. And I know it's a similar thing. Like, I know you all didn't have the career, but I'm about to have that career. I'm going to do the thing. So don't tell me that it's not possible, or at least not likely. But I do also, but a quick aside from similar aside from that, I do remember years ago reading that it's like 98% of people with a SAG card are not employable to the point of survival solely on as an actor. Like, it's very rare just to even, as you were talking about earlier, pay your bills, never mind super celebrity.
Yeah.
It's like, it almost sometimes from the outside looking in feels like if you're not a super celebrity, it's like a huge gap. Like, there's no middle class almost. It's like you're either a superstar or you just,
There used to be a bigger, this was one of my biggest issues with the actors' strike and the writers' strike. Let me just say up top, do I support them striking? Of course I do. I'm never, trust me, I'm a union, labor person across the board. Though I will say, I do think there's a complicated thing about having a union of incredibly rich people and incredibly poor people in one big umbrella. There's some bullshit in that. Straight up. And I've said this to people who I know who are working actors and writers in both the WGA and the Screen Actors Guild. I said, I don't buy it. But there used to be more of a middle class in the movie business, in the acting business, but that's definitely depleted. And that was one of the things that was recognized because of the streaming and how revenue became changed and the way work had changed within the acting business.
But say a little more about that point. Like what in this? So you're saying that within the union it doesn't work if there's this cavernous gap between the haves and have-nots,
Yeah.
who are supposed to all be.
Well, I think because the issue is the people who dictate the top are the very rich people. The people like Fran Drescher. Fran Drescher is a massively rich woman. So Fran Drescher, when she's advocating for the rights, she's advocating for the rights really of her class interests. It's completely true. So I told everyone, I said, when it started and that...
So wait, what is her role with...
She was I forget the official title name, but she's the president of the Screen Actors Guild.
Oh, right.
So she's like the lead. She's the lead bargaining person for the Screen Actors Guild. So, they were like Fran, but like Fran Drescher and them, they hang out with these studio executives. For them, this was more like, studio executives, why are you being so disrespectful to me? It became an issue when it became an issue for Fran Drescher. Not that the business had been exploitive even before it got to the Fran Dreschers. How it was before that was fine. The exploitive nature of how the movie business worked was fine for all of them until it became a problem for the upper class people within there.
And they didn't start feeling it until the shift in streaming revenues.
Yeah, because the streaming, because literally there were things they literally could not get. They got worried about the AI stuff because they were worried about them capturing parts of their brand or their persons that the studios could then use after their death, without their or their family or whoever owns their estate's authorizations, which I totally get. Right. I totally get it as a concern. And the money that would come after it, so forth and so on. The cut of those revenues. And they felt burned because, I can go have, dinner with the executive of Fox as a peer. I'm thinking we're both rich peers. And now they're trying to play me. So then they want all these people to galvanize who are poor, get them like we're union power. But then look, the contract that came out, many people think is crap.
Really?
Yeah. That and the WGA contract, people think it's crap. And I said, my thing was like this. I was like, well, what y'all should do is literally just walk away and start a whole new thing. I said, y'all need to walk away and start a whole new thing that's controlled by the actors. I said, let's go. This really the socialist solution. That's the only way to fix this in a real equitable way for all. Right. But no, it wasn't that. And now, a lot of people are very mad at Fran Drescher, don't like her. And I said, y'all set yourselves up to believe that she was going to be in your interests anyway. She's not. She's a rich woman. And it does not make sense to me. Their interests are not the same.
And is she still eating off of that TV show she did years ago? Or is she doing more than I'm aware of? Because I'm looking at her like...
she made a lot during that. It is in syndication. Well, that's it. So she'll have money, but she didn't make I know she was one of the highest paid per episode for a while when that show, in the height of that show. Was it The Nanny?
I know I know it was a big hit. I actually never did watch it.
Neither did I. But I know she was a mega. And then I'm sure she did spokesperson stuff, voiceover work. She's a massively rich woman. She has a lot of cash, and not just her. I won't just put it on her, the brass. Mm-hmm. So it's not a union in the interest of the multitude, right? Mm-hmm. And they only care about these things when it affects them. They don't, because look, the business has always been exploitive, and it's gotten more exploitive. It didn't just get exploitive because of artificial intelligence. This is where I have my massive criticism of AI, and I think AI is just, but I think AI is just another accoutrement in the extraction and exploitation of workers. That's all it is, right? It's just being used in that way. But the idea that AI has created the labor problem, that's bullshit.
All right, so listen. unfortunately, we got a little bit of a time
For
constraint.
sure.
So, but this is perfect for the first of an ongoing conversation about, and so what I'm encouraging people who watch this, obviously like, share, subscribe, and then put in the comments questions that you would like us to follow up on the next time we get Mtume here for Inside the Black Actor Studio.
Oh, wow. Wow. Whoa.
I think I just gave this segment its name.
Whoa.
We might have to snatch that from old boy.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Well, you know what, man? He don't deserve it. So
that's
grab it. And it was always the actors that made it more interesting than he ever did.
Of course. It was always this one, like I what I would have needed to do if we were really doing it is I needed to come out here with my stack of cards and my pretentiousness, my undeserved pretentiousness. And then we could do, so maybe
and
next
ask me
time
really like hollow, obtuse questions.
Yeah. You know, because you got to turn to the audience too, because you turn to the students, because students, you know, I want you to acknowledge how honored you should feel that I've brought someone here to hear me talk to them, you know.
Oh man.
Yeah, we're gonna have to work on that. But
work on that one.
No, man, I appreciate your work,
of course, man,
and the build, and hearing some of these experiences, because again, you know, I don't have any connection, and I know a lot of us don't.
Yeah, if there's any gaps that people want me to fill, like I know, I mean, there's so much, because there's even things I don't even necessarily think of, even in the mechanics of it, you know, and even things. I mean, we like even how it has translates into today, because I do also know what's different, and. And I don't like to sometimes do better or worse so much. It was always bad, but there are specific things of now that are very peculiar.
No, I mean, there's many more. There's other things. I am interested in some of just what might be seen as mundane mechanics of shoots. And
oh yeah,
I remember, you know, my mother, she grew up in the theater in New York, and she was, you know, she was in classes with, like, you know, in productions with Cicely Tyson, and
oh man,
she, you know, like a lot of, like, I remember for some random, Ben Gazzara was another person.
Oh,
that she
I'm
knew.
a huge.
Yeah, she used to. So like she was, and then even down here in Maryland, she would go even to be an extra on Barry Levinson Maryland projects, and what's the other guy that in Baltimore, the weird dude, James Waters.
What? You're talking about what's his name? From who did The Wire?
Not The Wire. I'm thinking of Waters. The one who did.
John Waters.
John Waters.
Oh,
wow. Like the wild,
yeah,
you know, kind of wild guy.
Yeah.
But she would just go as an extra, and she just liked being around other extras, actors. And I think there was another better word, not extras. Background actors is, I think, the more appropriate. I don't mean to disrespect it. But so I would hear her talk a little bit about just being on set, and she just liked being around and just seeing, and but she never was, you know, a professional or dedicated herself, so she was never around long enough to see some of the salaciousness or whatever. It was kind of just the, you know, but I always liked hearing her talk a little bit about it, and I'm always interested when I cross paths with people who have had these experiences to hear a little bit about. Yeah, what's it like on the other side of that camera? I mean, you know,
we could talk about. I mean, I have a lot of stories, man. And I I definitely have some people. You know what? One, I got to tell you about when I work with Kath.
Go ahead.
I'm gonna give you one. No, I'm gonna tell you right now. The preview for later.
Oh, okay. Right.
When I work with Kathleen Turner, we're gonna talk about that one.
All right.
And I
like that.
I don't mind. That's one moment where I don't mind throwing out hate out there.
All right. Well,
but shout out to Kathy Moriarty, who I also worked with on the same movie. Great woman. Great woman. Amazing. Probably one of the best screen things I ever worked with. And I also had the worst screen relationship I ever had with Kathleen Turner. Worst. We'll preview that for later.
I love it. All right.
For later.
All right, everybody. You know what to do. Put it in the comments so we know what you want to hear more about. And we'll get some more, next on Inside the Black Actor Studio. Thanks, man. I mix what I like.
And what do you sacrifice?
Calm, kindness, kinship, love. I've given up all chance at inner peace. I made my mind a sunless space. I share my dreams with ghosts. I wake up every day to an equation I wrote 15 years ago from which there's only one conclusion. I'm damned for what I do. My anger, my ego, my unwillingness to yield, my eagerness to fight, that set me on a path from which there's no escape. I yearn to be a savior against injustice without contemplating the cost, and by the time I look down, there's no longer any ground beneath my feet. What is my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. Now, the ego that started this fight will never have a mirror or an audience or the light of gratitude. So what do I sacrifice? Everything.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.